What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So I keep going back to that NVIDIA GeForce Now leak from time to time when a game from the list ends up getting announced and then eventually released. Well, now it looks like a new trademark was spotted online pointing towards another game, this one being pretty surprising from the list, getting revealed here pretty soon. We're going to go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch Online service with those N64 games as the next game for the service has been announced, but now it's leading to some questions around maybe some issues that Nintendo will be running into here with the service. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps that a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all of the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with the Valve Steam Deck. I have been waiting for a while now for this email to show up in my inbox saying, hey, you're good to go. Just go ahead and complete checkout and we'll ship the Steam Deck out to you. I was in like Q2. We're in Q2, so now I'm just any day now, right? Well, yesterday was the day as I got that email, so I'm very excited to finally get this thing in. We'll do a full teardown, unboxing, and all of that. But it looks like a bunch of people were starting to get emails for Q2 orders, and a lot of that has to do with Valve being able to ramp up production and shipments for the Steam Deck. We can see this posted up over on Twitter. This is from the Steam Deck account saying, welcome to Q2. We've just sent out the first set of order emails to Q2 reservers in order of reservation time. Starting today, we're ramping up Steam Deck shipments and we'll be sending more order availability emails every week, sometimes even twice a week. So exciting stuff there. If you're in Q2 now, just keep an eye on that email. And some people were mentioning online that like a couple have got kicked to their spam folder, and that would not be fun to miss that email. So make sure you're just kind of checking things out and keeping an eye on it. And yes, checking that spam filter. I did notice though, when I logged into Steam, it also came up with a message that said, hey, your reservation order is ready. So if you don't check your email and you're logged into Steam, you should know if you've been chosen because they will give you a little message. Also, we know that Splatoon 3 is set to release this summer, which I mean, we're coming up on that pretty quick now, right? Since we're into April. Well, it does look like there's at least some movement on the Splatoon 3 front as a website has gone live for Nintendo Japan, which shows off a bunch of new screenshots. You can see some of them here. And there was one in particular that was making the rounds because it does look really strange. I mean, people were pointing to like Spider-Verse or Doctor Strange style, but it does show like an entire city upside down. And there's been a lot of speculation around Splatoon 3's like big reveal being a very robust single player or story mode. We had like single player modes with some of the previous Splatoon 2, but that felt like it was kind of just teaching me the game better so that I could jump into multiplayer and do more there. So that's the thing I hope we see with Splatoon 3 is a very interesting and engrossing story mode. But I mean, the screenshots look good here. The website seems to be ready to go. So I am wondering if we're going to have just a direct focus specifically on Splatoon 3. Seems like there's a lot to talk about there, and that would make the most sense for them to talk about Splatoon 3 for maybe like 30 minutes and then give us a release date, give them a nice buffer time rather than going from June to release in July, maybe to show it off more in May and then set up that July or even August release. Oh, and if you were someone who was hoping that we would see this rebalancing patch actually have a legitimate effect on Gran Turismo 7, well, the patch is out. And it looks like it has so far, which you can see the patch here. I'll leave it down in the sources as well so you can read through it because there is a lot to go through, but this is update 1.11. They had already detailed it quite extensively before this, but it is now live. And the biggest thing here that I've seen discussed online is that it actually feels like the overall credit payouts have been buffed quite a bit. Like you feel like you're actually earning legitimate amounts of credits when you go through some of these different races. Some have been added, others have been tweaked. They also increased the overall wallet size that you can have, and they changed things up a bit when it comes to numbers of cars that are listed in the lineup for used cars and legend cars, which did feel kind of constrained actually. So good to see that we are at least seeing improvements here when it comes to the economy of this game. People are still calling for the always online connection to be changed out and not required, but based on what they did with GT Sport, I have a feeling it's gonna be with this game pretty much for the foreseeable future. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo Switch Online Plus N64 expansion pack. The next game for the subscription service has been announced. We'll head over here to Twitter. This is from Nintendo of America saying, get into the swing. Tee off with Mario and friends when Mario Golf comes to Nintendo Switch for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack members on April 15th, so next week. And this is kind of following the trend where Nintendo now will announce the new game for the Nintendo 64 section of the subscription service, and it comes out pretty quickly. I mean, like a week, that's not too bad. For a little while there, it was like a month before. So good to see Mario Golf, though. Big fan of this game. Back in the day, this was the absolute classic, and you would sit down with a couple of friends and, of course, go through some of these different courses. Or for me, I would play mini golf, and mini golf was a lot of fun in this one. So I think this is going to go over pretty well with the online service, mostly because it's turn-based, so it's not like more of an action or a real-time game, like a racing game like Mario Kart that can obviously have a lot of stuttering. Although, if they're stuttering when it's your turn and you're trying to time out the button presses for your shot, that'd be pretty frustrating. So I'm just hoping it's a very enjoyable and smooth online experience, because this could have a ton of potential online for this service. And now that Mario Golf has been dated with April 15th, we can see this list that Nintendo Life has over on their site, showing off all of the games that we have on the service now, and then the other games that we're expecting to come up, because Nintendo announced several of them when they first showed off this upgrade or this expansion pack for the subscription service. And currently we have Pokemon Snap and Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, that are undated but are upcoming. And we assume, based on the release schedule, we're going to see one of these two in May and then the other one in June, which I will admit leads us up nicely to their typical June Direct. Also, just for fun, let's go ahead and take a guess. I think it's going to go Pokemon Snap, and then Kirby 64 just rounds things out as we head into the typical E3 June, or just the June Direct at this point, since there's no E3 this year. And what I think we're going to see is Nintendo just announce like 10 more Nintendo 64 games, because we already know that they had about 38 games set up initially when they first released it. This was thanks to a data mining, which you can see here. This was posted up by Mondo Mega back in October, saying initial data mining from the N64 app is somewhat fruitful. Going by the game IDs, there are at least 38 N64 titles planned for Nintendo Switch Online. The list is alphabetical, so you can fill in some of the gaps already, like 37 is Majora's Mask, 32 is Smash, 33 is Wave Race, then 14 through 16 is Mario Party. Would Nintendo actually put all 3 Mario Parties on this service? I mean, why not, I guess? Look, they already have Mario Party on the Switch that pulls from those boards. But they already have Mario Golf on the Switch, and they just dropped Mario Golf from the N64 on the service next week. Anyway, based on the number of 64 games that we have now and that are upcoming with Kirby and Pokemon Snap, that would leave us with 22 more Nintendo 64 games. And I almost wonder if Nintendo's gonna do like 12 and then 10, or if they're just gonna basically say, hey, here's 5 or 6 that are coming up for the rest of this year, and then we'll catch up with you guys in January or February for the next Direct to show off the next year or so of these different games. If that's a monthly release schedule they want to stick to, they could eventually unveil Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, and maybe N64 goes to every other month, and then the month before that might be a Game Boy Advance game, then a Game Boy game, and they just kind of start mixing things up a bit better, because yeah, they're gonna run out of 64 games, I would say, pretty quickly. They were going to run into this eventually. The library just is not that large. Now, I will say Quest 64 is still out there, and that's like 3 or 4 months worth of releases there. But if you take away a lot of the licensed games, like, they're not going to drop WWF No Mercy. As awesome as that would be, the likenesses, all the licensing around the game itself, it's not worth it for Nintendo when they're just basically dropping ROMs onto this emulator they've created into this service. They can collect that yearly revenue that's just service-based revenue. So there are still some things they can pull from. I mean, we just talked about Wave Race, Smash. That would be an interesting one to drop on there, because obviously we have Smash Brothers Ultimate, but also, I mean, just the classic with online play. Crossing fingers, of course, that it actually works decently. But then they could go to Capcom and get something like Mega Man 64, which would be pretty cool to see. I'm sure a large audience who's never played Mega Man Legends at least be exposed to it somewhat with that. But at least as of now, even though we're running up to the end of the currently planned or announced Nintendo 64 games, seems Nintendo has at least another 2 years worth of monthly releases for Nintendo 64 games planned out. Are they going to scrape the bottom of the barrel? Probably yes, at some point they will, but at least for now, we should be good up until 2024. So we'll see how Nintendo handles this, most likely in June. Next up, let's talk about that NVIDIA GeForce Now leak. It was a list of games that sounded far-fetched and almost like one of those lists you would see pop up ahead of a big event like E3, and it has like all this stuff, and it looks like they ran through the meeting room snapping a picture of it, and it just sounds like it's the best lineup of games you've ever seen, and that obviously leads to disappointment. I mean, this list has some wild stuff on there. There's like God of War for the PC. There was Chrono Cross for current platforms. What a world that would be, right? Well, it looks like based on a new trademark, one that's, again, very surprising, could actually become a reality. Take a look at this over on Gamatsu. This post up saying Square Enix trademarks Tactics Ogre Reborn in Japan. Now, I'm very hopeful that this is not a cell phone game. So I am going to at least say, all right, this looks like we could actually be seeing something from Square Enix and Tactics Ogre on current platforms. Now, if we look at the lineup of games that we've had for Tactics Ogre, Ogre Battle, I mean, in 2010, Gamatsu put this list together here. 2010, we had the Let Us Cling Together remake for the PSP, and before that, we'd go back to the Game Boy Advance in 2001, and then obviously we had Ogre Battle 64. We had Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together on the PlayStation and Super Nintendo and all of this, so it's not exactly a series that has had a lot done to it recently. I mean, outside of that PSP game, it's been like 20 years, which kind of lines up with what Square has been talking about doing over the last year or so, which is go into their back catalog games, their legacy titles, their franchises, and see what they think they could bring up to current platforms through way of remasters like we see with Chrono Cross, or full-on remakes like we see with Live Alive going into that HD 2D style. I'm curious how Tactics Ogre is going to be treated here. Will it get the Chrono Cross treatment, or will they go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, let's really take a shot at this like we did with Live Alive. Let's go full-on HD 2D with it. But either way, this is exciting stuff to see a game series like this potentially see this big revival. And to me, this has like Nintendo Direct written all over it like we saw with Live Alive, but we'll just have to keep an eye out for a new Tactics Ogre game in 2022. I'm telling you, that NVIDIA GeForce Now leak keeps coming through. Next up, let's talk about a game that appears to be getting set up for a holiday 2022 release, and that's the next entry in the Need for Speed series. We can see this posted up by VGC. It's from Jeff Grubb with the Grubb Snacks Show, is transcribed by VGC, where Jeff says Need for Speed is still coming this year. That's true. That game should be coming in November. If you are a Need for Speed fan who has bought a next-gen console, here's some news. It's next-gen only. They are shifting to next-gen only. Now, the sad thing about this Need for Speed game, it's supposed to be coming out before the end of March 2023, but it was actually delayed like a full year because EA needed Criterion to go run support for Battlefield 2042. And well, we saw how that one turned out, but at least now they seem on track to be releasing a next-gen, can we just say current-gen now? Current-gen, PS5 and Xbox Series and probably PC version of Need for Speed this holiday. I really like Need for Speed Heat, but there's still kind of an issue with it. It's locked at 30 frames per second on consoles. Now, I mean, on PC, you know, frame rates, you can do whatever you want with it, but like, it's weird that that didn't get like a patch, at least to my knowledge. I'll fire it up every now and then after I completed it, and it's still at like 30 frames per second. But I liked what we saw with Need for Speed Heat, and I'm very curious to see where Criterion takes things with a current gen only Need for Speed, because I was completely expecting cross-gen for Need for Speed. But we know EA is not going to do their EA Play Live like they typically would around that E3 time, which, hey, now there's no E3, so EA can announce it whenever they want, and I think that's just the route they're going to go. Sure, they could pop up in a state of play, or they could even go to Microsoft's show that most likely will be taking place in June, or maybe they go to Summer Games Fest with it. But I mean, at this point, just keep an eye out, because we're kind of expecting Need for Speed to pop up at some point here in the next couple of months, heading towards that holiday release. In our last bit of news, let's talk about one of the most unique games coming to PlayStation, and it actually could be popping up here pretty soon, as it has now been rated. Now, this game is called Stray. It showed up in a state of play, and immediately I was like, I have not really seen a game like that before, where you're playing as a stray cat. It looks almost like a action adventure puzzle style game, but we can see the rating here. This rated in South Korea, which typically we'll see these ratings pop up and either it leaks the game out, or it just tells us, hey, the game is most likely set to have its like release date revealed. It was originally set for early 2022 release, but that's kind of where we left off at this point. So I'm hoping to see maybe Sony do some sort of showcase or state of play. We had heard them maybe doing something with like PlayStation VR 2, some sort of showcase there. I don't know if Stray would fit in with that, but they could also do like a full blog post on it or something, or just release a trailer and then we get the release date for it. Because while I didn't expect to be looking forward to a game where you're just playing as a stray cat, I'll admit the trailer and the gameplay and some of the stuff they showed off is at least interesting, and it's, like I said, the most unique game I've seen in a while come to PlayStation, so I'll certainly be checking it out. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you played a Max Payne game before? 54% said, no, I've never played any of them. Well, that's disappointing. Okay, you know what? I have great news. They're all backwards compatible on the Xbox, so you can play any of them. But if you're looking at the first one, you're like, oh, that doesn't look like it's aged very well, at least give the third one a shot. Max Payne 3 is still a really, really good game. I mean, you can get it on like PC and all that too, but like the third Max Payne, it still holds up to this day. You can play it on your Xbox. Some people mention it needs a patch, which, I mean, it's on the PS3, so if it's gonna go to the PlayStation 5, they would need to do a remaster of some kind, and I think that's a game that deserves at least a remaster, because visually it still holds up. Frame rate and probably some extra features and stuff, I'm sure it could use that with like the newer systems now, but that would be really cool to see. Again, if you have not played Max Payne and you're unsure about the first two, at least give the third one a shot. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Brandon saying, I miss Time Splitters. For those who don't know, it was the unrelated spiritual sequel to GoldenEye 007 and Perfect Dark. It was made by the team that created those games, who had left Rare to create Free Radical games. The games were amazing, and I'd love a port of Time Splitters 2 for the Switch. They said something for Time Splitters was coming a few years ago, and then it went dark. Please give us more Time Splitters THQ. I wouldn't be shocked if Time Splitters 2 got the remastered treatment, had online play, and then it was just released on all platforms. THQ has done that for several games, even something like Sphinx. They just dropped it on the Switch, and here you go, it's just an upscaled version of it. As for Time Splitters back in the day, it was, the thing I really remember about it, specifically Time Splitters 2 on the PS2, it's very fluid, like much more so, noticeably more than other first-person shooters at the time, which were like 20, 30 frames per second. I think like the Call of Duties then you also had like Black and several others, but then Time Splitters was 60 frames per second. We don't really talk a lot about resolution back then. We're playing on CRTs, but you would notice just how much more fluid that game was versus others, and how much more fast-paced it was. So exciting stuff to hear that we could be getting multiple Time Splitters games coming up here. It just might be a little while. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There was the Nintendo 64 expansion pack, Mario Golf on the way, couple more titles, but then what do you think Nintendo does in June, and which games would you like to see added to the service? And then also, Tactics Ogre. Do you think this trademark is going to lead to something with Square Enix going back and grabbing the series, a remaster, a remake? And do you think that NVIDIA GeForce Now leak comes through once again? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.